Okay, put my first page last. I've really had a rather non-traditional life, so I don't profess to be an expert on any given subject. However, throughout the years, and my many passionate endeavors, I can tell you what's really worked for me and what hasn't. I really had no formal education except for a high school diploma, so I kind of refer to the school of hard knocks. But in reality, I had a wonderful, phenomenal education because of my father and all of his employees. And I went to work with my dad. If I wanted to see him, I had to go to the mill yard when he was building sawmills on the North Coast. And I worked around equipment and did all the things, to help him. But I was able to watch how he did things. And his accountants taught me to keep books. His lawyers taught me a lot about the law. His secretaries taught me how to type, I learned how to type in school, but they did teach me how to organize an office and how to, how to do things that worked in an office. And then, of course, my dad taught me how to do things and how to get things done, how to make things happen. And the thing is, I never was as good at it as he was. He would have had this hospital built 5 years ago at least, but, the things that made things happen the way he did them, I think I learned those things from him. So I'm going to use personal examples of things that have happened to me because I think it makes it easier to relate to. And because I will speak of some of these endeavors, I think I'll give a quick history of my career, so to speak. Raising my family was my priority until I was about 30. And during that time that I was raising my boys, we moved to Siskiyou County where my husband found work as a logger, hauling logs. And I did all the mom things like Cub Scouts and 4-H and PTA, and I was a member of the school board. I actually got elected to the school board, and I won by 2 votes. And they were 2 votes that my friends went to Hawaii. I lived in a little town. There were about 300 people, I think, altogether. And so Bob and Eleanor went to Hawaii, and I said, you better get your absentee ballot in before you go. Well, election night, it was tied. And I didn't sleep all night because I knew they had get their absentee ballots in, but I didn't know if they voted for me. So they did, and I won that election by 2 votes. So it pays to get people to do their absentee ballots. Anyway, as the boys grew up, I became an entrepreneur and a small businesswoman. My first business was building wooden boxes for howitzer cannon barrels and Nike missiles. And another woman and I took on the job. We had a contract. And we worked at night so our husbands could babysit. We worked around PTA meetings and other things because we could. It was a quota. As long as I got my boxes out on time, it didn't matter when we did the work. But it was the hardest job I ever did because the boxes weighed like 200 pounds. And so it was a tough job, but it was fun because it was different and it was a challenge. 2 years later, when all the contracts had been filled, my husband and I opened a retail Western clothing store. And I had never been in retail business before, and neither had he, but we made it was fun, and we learned how to sell boots and cowboy hats, and now let me tell you, when you're 4'9", cowboy clothes don't look so good on you. But then life happened, and I was divorced, and I moved back to Willits, and I became president of Microfor, or vice president of Microfor, and we managed sewage treatment systems. But I worked in the real estate sales division, and it gave me a good background for title work and property development. Then my dad sold Microfor in 1981, and for some reason that I've never understood, I got into the asphalt, sand, and gravel business called Hot Rocks. And this business was fraught with challenges. If it didn't have 3 to 4 crises a day, I was kind of scared because I thought, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I got good at solving problems because truly every day was a crisis. It just didn't matter. And I had a sign that posted in my office, and it said, the only reason I stick around this place is to see what's going to happen today. Or tomorrow, I think it was. But it was during my tenure at Hot Rocks that I began thinking that I could do more good if I ran for office because there were so many rules and regulations and other things that made it almost impossible to be in business that I thought we needed more business people in the legislature and fewer professional politicians. And I usually got that kind of answer when I would say that when I was running. So I decided to run for state senate. Never mind that I had never run for anything, but, well, I did run for school board. But at that time, my father had come down with a terminal illness, and he had become chairman, he was chairman of the board of the Howard Foundation since its inception, and he asked me to please continue on with his work. And I said, Dad, I really don't know how to follow in your footsteps. I don't know how to do this. And he said, oh yes, you can do it. You will do it in your own way, on your own terms, and it might be different than I would do it, but you can do this. And so of course I took the job because it was important to him. And then life happened again, and my husband died. It was about 6 months after my father died. So I was left hanging out to dry, wondering what in the world was I supposed to do, as the two men in my life who had been my best friends and my mentors were gone. And I had also lost the election. And, you know, I was just kind of out there floundering around, wondering, what am I going to do with my life? And I'd never lived alone, either, in my whole life, because I got left home and got married when I was 16, and I'd just always been married, had kids, or just never been alone. So I worked over in Sacramento at the Resources Agency, if you can believe this, teaching loggers how to run computers. So the spotted owls, so that was a real adventure. They didn't really like the job either, I can tell you. So I stayed there a year, and I decided to come back home because in 1994, the Loma Prieta earthquake happened, and they passed Senate Bill 1953, which said all acute care hospitals had to either retrofit the hospital, build a new one, or close. Well, closing was not an option. And retrofitting really wasn't either, because our hospital was like 85 years old, or maybe it wasn't that old at that time. And we decided, well, we're going to build a new hospital. So at that time, that's when the passion kicked in for me. I became passionate about this job, and I wanted to see that it would happen. So there was a lot to do. But it's also when I realized that when one door closes, another one opens. And all of the things I had learned on the campaign trail served me very well for the job that I was taking on with the foundation. I wasn't really afraid to give a speech. I wasn't afraid to ask for money, and I had a huge network of connections in the district. So in all of these various jobs and endeavors, I've developed some theories as to what makes things happen and how you can be successful if you really set your mind to it. It's a commitment, not authority, that produces results. And Elaine gave me a great quote: success is the moment-to-moment acceptance of self-worth. I think that's a great quote. But there are three important components to it. Follow your passion. You need to be passionate about what you're doing. Make a commitment. You have to do that. And face your fears, and I think almost that's the hardest one. Facing your fears is really tough. So equally as important is that you should embrace your failures as an opportunity to learn a lesson and be more cognizant of opportunities that maybe you hadn't thought about. Sometimes we don't succeed at first, but learn from your failures and be persistent. So let's take them one at a time. Follow your passion. Confucius said, if you have a job you love, you will never have to work another day in your life. And I think Jan Lambridge is a perfect example. She's going to shoot me for pointing her out. But she's a perfect example of this because she's worked for the hospital or the foundation for 64 years. And she's gotten up every day and gone to work and loved what she did every single day. I've never seen her be grumpy or unhappy when she came to work because she loved being there. So it's important. She's had an amazing career because she followed her passion and she loved her job. And I'm going to use our foundation office as an example of how teamwork is necessary because you can't do it all. You can't do it all by yourself. And there were other things we wanted to do besides build the hospital, and I was busy worrying about that. But one of the things we wanted to do is have a garden. And truly and honestly, if Ananda Johnson had not had the passion that she has to make that garden happen, it probably would have never happened. But she had the same passion for the garden that I had for the hospital. And it's a beautiful, wonderful thing that we can be proud of, and it feeds our hospital, and I guess we also donate to the food bank and other places. And then the other thing that we have in our office is Doreen. And Doreen feels as passionate about avenues to wellness as we do with the things that we're doing. And I know she's been putting a lot of time and effort into what are we going to have in our wellness center, how are we going to design it. We've made lots of trips to other wellness centers to make sure that what we build is going to work and that we can actually make enough money to pay the overhead. And I know that this is Doreen's passion, and because she is passionate about it, we will get it done, and it will be a model that we can be proud of once it happens. And I'm going to digress a little here to talk about being an employer and about teamwork, because I've always believed that the very best way to run an office is to have a team. You need to hire team players, and if I had a choice between a person who didn't know a thing about the job but had a first-class attitude, or a person who may know what they're doing, but they had a stinky attitude or didn't want to be a team player, I'd take the person with a good attitude any day, because you can train those people to do whatever it is you want them to do, because they're willing and they're ready and they want to be part of the team. I want to tell a story about Steve Watson. He worked for my dad, and my dad sometimes he changed his mind, he changed his mind a lot, and it frustrated a lot of people that worked for him. But Steve worked on the ranch, and he worked for him for something like 30 years. And he said, if Robert wants to build a fence today, and he wants me to tear it down tomorrow, and he wants me to build it back the next day, it all pays the same. And my dad loved Steve, because he would his attitude was the thing that made it wonderful. So I think sometimes you can judge how you're doing as an employer by how long your employees stay with you. If you have a rapid turnover, something isn't right, and you need to look at what's happening. Why are people leaving? Why aren't they staying? I also believe you should never ask an employee to do something you wouldn't do yourself, like you need to take your turn vacuuming the office, cleaning the toilet, taking out the garbage. You need to do that, because why should they do it if you won't? And I think that it adds a lot of value to the employer-employee relationship. When we had our first gala, we were all dressed to the nines, and it was just a wonderful evening, and about halfway through, this man came up to me and he said, Margie, the men's bathroom is horrible. It's just gross. You need to get somebody to go clean it. And I thought, okay, who am I going to get to go clean it? And I'm looking around, and everybody that worked for us was all dressed up, and I thought, well, guess who? So I went and got a bunch of paper towels and went in this bathroom, and it was really awful. And I mopped up all the urine off the floor and cleaned it up, and I had a long dress on, and I was scooped over like this. I was glad that I had a long dress on. But there were 10 men in line waiting to go in, and not one of them offered to help. But when I was done, this lady came up to me and she said, I just don't believe that you did that. Why would you do that? Why didn't you get somebody else to do it? And I said, well, would you like to do that? And she just looked at me and didn't say anything. So, it just kind of goes along with the territory. I also believe in cross-training in a small office. If someone is out with an illness or an unforeseen problem, it's really good to have someone else in the office know how to do that job. Maybe not the whole job, but it's important to hire people who are confident enough to teach someone else to do their job in a pinch and not be threatened. And you can't believe how many people are threatened if you try to do that. So I think the most well-run offices that I've observed are people with a team spirit and have a camaraderie between employees. I think we have an amazing team spirit at the hospital. For what these people have gone through in the last, really year, because the hospital was supposed to be built a year ago. And what they've gone through and the move and all the things that have happened, and we still come up with 5 stars. It's a pretty amazing thing, because as the sign says, same family, new home. And it is a family. It's a family at the hospital, and it's a team. So once again, passion. So once you get your passion established, it's necessary to make the commitment. And I remember when I decided to run for state senate, I just decided to do it, and I ran down and I filed the papers, and I thought, I can do this. And that next day, my dad walked into my office, and he threw the Press Democrat down on the desk, and he said, and it had headlines, I swear they were that big, he said, happy to run for state senate. And I just took a sharp breath. I started shaking all over. I got tears in my eyes, and I looked up at my dad and I said, what in the world ever made me think I could do this? Well, I was committed. There was no backing out. I'd done it, I said I was going to do it, so I did it. But sometimes you have to think about what you're committing yourself to before you see it in paper. Once you've made the commitment, tenacity is really important. And my dad one time, I don't know if any of you remember Bob Reinhardt, but he was a LA Ram, and he was a great big guy, and they were giving him an award or something, and he worked for my dad, and he said, well, Bob will come in and he'll look me right in the belly button, because Daddy was short. He was tall, and he said, he was a tenacious little man, so we were going home, and Dad said, what's tenacious? And I said, I don't really know, so we looked it up in the dictionary. I said, well, Dad, you've just been politely called stubborn. So tenacity is necessary. And one of my favorite quotes is from Winston Churchill, who said, never give up, never give up, never, never, never. And I think those words many, many times, because sometimes when things aren't going so right, you think, is it really worth it? But yes, it is, if you keep your eye on the ball. So there are many ways to reach a goal, and there's one thing you can count on. It doesn't usually go the way you think it's going or the way you plan it. So you need to be flexible. If something isn't working, you just need to take another look and find out what might work, and then not be afraid to don't be afraid of risk. You've got to try something new. And with the hospital, it went along fine for about 4 or 5 years. We had it all planned, we were ready to go, we went out to bid, and it came back $20 million over budget. There wasn't any way that we could raise that kind of money. We were hawked to the hilt to build it on budget. So, we had to rethink what we were doing. And I had a nurse tell me, well, you've just given away the store. You let Adventist Health build your hospital, and you've given it away. We didn't give it away. We found a way to get it built. We have this fabulous new hospital. The foundation has no debt, and we can build the rest of the campus. But, when something becomes obvious that it isn't going to work, you don't quit and say, well, we can't do it. You have to come up with plan B. And, we did a complete U-turn. But sometimes you have to do that. And I think that the only things that really count are the ones that you finish. Procrastination is your enemy, and you can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. Then there's fear. Fear keeps many people from attaining their potential. I used to be afraid of so many things, especially confrontation. I didn't want to do anything that was confrontational. And my late husband would look at me and say, a coward dies 1,000 deaths. Well, you really do. If you don't face your fear, and you think about that every day you're afraid, you do die 1,000 deaths. And if you confront it, it's over, it's done, and you can go on to the next thing. You should trust your hopes and not your fears, because nobody can make you inferior unless you agree to it. I remember my Senate confirmation for the California Transportation Commission. That was the worst thing that I think I've ever been through, because I was in the asphalt sand and gravel business, and I had religiously looked at the votes that we had, and I never voted on any project that I might even think about bidding on, and I kept the record of it, and it never occurred to me that anybody would think I had a conflict of interest. But I was a non-union contractor, and the unions decided that they were going to get me. So there was a big headline in the Chronicle that said, Transportation Commissioner's big crook. Basically, I don't think it said exactly like that, but it said that I had a conflict of interest and I shouldn't be confirmed. Well, I thought, I don't know whether this system works or doesn't, because maybe they will, what are they going to come up with? So I took all my records, and I think they investigated me with the Auditor General, and the Attorney General would never investigate because he said there was no criminal intent. But it was really an ordeal that I went through. And when the time came for Senate confirmation, I stayed up all night. I didn't go to bed, cramming every transportation fact I could think of in my head, because I didn't know what they were going to ask me, and I didn't bother to find out. And so when I got there, I looked like death warmed over, and there's like all these senators sitting on the dais. I'm sitting at a table, and there's 7 reporters on the floor with flash cameras looking up at me taking pictures. And so it was an extremely intimidating scenario to start with. And Bill Bagley he was an assemblyman, he was chairman of the commission, and he sat beside me, and I said, I'm so scared. And he said, you can't be scared, Marge. You can't be scared. And I can tell you, I hear those words a lot of times. Any time that you're scared, those words ring true to me. And, you know, they didn't ask me anything about transportation, nothing. They asked me about the political side of things, which I already knew. I mean, I knew what I'd done, and I knew how I was voting. But because I wasn't prepared properly, I didn't check things out. It was a pretty terrible experience. So then there's another kind of fear, sort of, that you prepare for. And my kids, on my 70th birthday, came to my house in a limousine. My son flew down from Alaska. And he said, well, Mom, we're taking you skydiving. And I thought, right. And I just about had a stroke. And I thought, okay, so I'm thinking on the way over there, I'm thinking, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? And the worst thing that can happen is your parachute's not going to open. But then you have a man strapped on your back that knows what he's doing. So I think, so that lessens the odds that you're going to crash and burn. So, you know, I should probably just say this is an adventure and relax and do it. So I think my boys were kind of disappointed that I wasn't scared to death, but they decided that I was going to do this and it was going to be an adventure. Well, so the next surprise was they took me to 18,000 feet because they wanted me to have the ultimate free fall. So the ultimate free fall took all 4 minutes to get to the ground, and I went about 150 miles an hour. So there's kind of a funny kind of fear. And now no one would think, you know, you could think of a jillion things that somebody might think when they jump out of an airplane at 18,000 feet going 150 miles an hour. Guess what I thought? My face was going like this. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm afraid I'm going to ruin my facelift. So, you know, you never know what you're going to think. So I didn't tell my boys, don't you dare buy me a bungee jump for my 80th birthday, because I'm not going. But you can't be afraid to take a risk. It's our attitude at the beginning of a difficult task, which more than anything else will affect its successful outcome. If you believe it'll work out, you'll see opportunities, and if you don't believe it, you'll see obstacles. I took a risk when I named my company Hot Rocks. I had a partner whose last name began with R, and he wanted to name it H&R Sand and Gravel. And I said, Barney, you know, who's going to remember H&R Sand and Gravel? I said, we need a name that somebody, you know, will remember. Because we were going to be portable, and we were going to go from job to job, and we wanted people to know who we were. So a friend stopped by, and this is sort of risky to tell this, but I'm going to. A friend stopped by, and I asked him, what's another name for asphalt? And he said, well, it might be a rectal disease. He said, but it's a hot rock. So how perfect was that? I had the H and I had the R. So I went over to Sacramento to get my Women's Business Enterprise license, and I walked in and I said, I'm Margie Handley from Hot Rocks. And about 12 people just kind of came out from every cubicle, like they were on a conveyor belt or something, and they stood there staring at me. And I said, is there something wrong? And she said, no, but ever since you've applied, she said, you've been the subject of conversation in this office. And we just wondered what a person looked like that would name their company Hot Rocks. So the risk paid off, because everybody always remembered who we were. We never had any trouble after that. So let's talk a little about failure. Failure really isn't an option unless you refuse to try. And if something doesn't work out, you'll learn valuable lessons for the next thing you do. When one door closes, another opens, and as long as you don't focus on the closed door, look for the opportunities. Did I feel like a failure when I lost the election? Not at all, because I learned so much. I stretched myself to do things I never dreamed I could do. I learned a myriad of things I never would have known. Because you have to have an opinion about everything when you're running for office. And believe me, some of them are things you don't care if you know. And I met people that have become lifelong friends. And I learned, you know, I can give a speech and I can ask for money and it doesn't intimidate me too much. So it was an amazing experience. And it was a grand adventure, and the fact that I received 49.9% in a 29% Republican district, that's probably as good as any Republican ever did in this district. So I didn't feel too bad about it. And I really was happy that I had run, and I actually thought everybody should run for public office once in their life because it's really an amazing experience. And I've thought a lot about Wowzer closing lately, and how sad Roger feels, and sort of betrayed by the community. But he did a wonderful thing for the kids, and a lot of good will come of this. I don't think he realizes that yet, but good always comes from something that you do that's good. And I think if he can just apply the lessons that he learned, I know they were thinking about tiny houses, and at the last mental health board meeting, they are actually going to build a tiny house village. So this may be the thing that he can do. He may have to move to a different place or do it in a different way, but maybe this will be the thing that puts Wowzer back on the map, and they have something where they can make an income, and then they'll be able to survive. So perseverance is critical, and I think you're able to beat the odds only if you have the discipline for when other people quit. Be determined and productive. We're living in exciting times. And believe it or not, there's many opportunities right now as there ever have been, and there will be many opportunities 10 to 20 years from now. It's just that times change, and you have to not be afraid of change, and you have to change with what happens. I mean, we were in the manufacturing age. We're really not in that anymore. We're in a communication age. So you need to switch how you think, and you'll find the opportunities. Opportunity sometimes just comes disguised as hard work. And when you're making a success of something, it isn't work, it's a way of life. You enjoy yourself because you're making a difference in your community. So I urge you to work for the things that you believe in, have the courage of your convictions, and share your ideas and thoughts when the opportunity presents itself. Listen to others, because there's a lot of wonderful ideas floating around out there. I used to have a sign over my kitchen sink to remind me to quit talking and listen. And it said, caution, and be sure brain is engaged before putting mouth into gear. And I think sometimes I still need that sign to look at. Another important thing is to understand your strengths and weaknesses. I have a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is contagious. So I'm usually able to get people kind of excited about a project. But don't make me the chief negotiator in a deal, because I'll give away the store. I'm a terrible negotiator. I'll just say, okay, let's just do that, so it'll happen. But, I'm not the best one to make the deal. So you find someone else to do it that knows what they're doing, and then let them do it. We all have weaknesses, and at various times in our lives we can have problems that we aren't able to solve on our own, and depression can set in. And I remember when my baby died, I was a basket case, and I needed to see a psychiatrist. And back in those days, when you went to see a psychiatrist, it was just literally a taint on the family name. And my mom and dad were wonderful people, but they weren't having any part of me going to see a psychiatrist. And I really didn't have any money to pay for such a thing, because we lived paycheck to paycheck. And I was finally able to find a minister who set me up with a doctor that he knew, and got the help that I needed. But if you feel you need counseling, don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. There's no shame in getting help when you need it. And for too many years, we've swept things like that under the rug. And it's time to just face the fact that 1 in 4 people have mental health issues. And so there's probably 30 people here, so there's probably 8 of us that need help. So, that's a fairly intimidating statistic, really, when you think about it. So, another thing that's important, we tend to be busy and lead hectic lives. At least some of us put ourselves in that position. And I think it's important to have quiet time. I don't know whom to credit this quote to, but it's so appropriate. The self must know stillness before it can discover the true song. Sometimes when I've been multitasking to the max and things are swirling around in my head and I'm just like uptight, I go to the ranch and I pull weeds, or I plant flowers, or I dig in the dirt, or I get in my little easy go and go up on the mountain and listen to the birds and just watch the beautiful world that God's made. And it's necessary to stay grounded, because I think sometimes we can get wrapped up and caught up in what we're doing and think we're so important that we can't, think the way we should. I think when one is a public figure, there's so many rumors and so much false information that goes around. And politics runs on perception, not reality. So one has to develop a thick skin, and you have to let it roll off your back and not let people, what they say or things that are printed on social media get to you. I don't even look at the internet because there's some ugly things about my father and about me. And, if I read them every day, I'd be pretty depressed. And most of it's not true, and so how would you can't get it off. So you just have to let it go. You can't dwell on those things. So in that vein, it's important to keep your sense of humor. Laughter is the sunshine of the soul. So look for the humor in a situation. Sometimes a sense of humor can pull you through the worst situation and put everything back in the proper perspective. So this was supposed to be an hour-long speech. It sure went by in a hurry. so I'm going to stop with a few things, and then we'll talk. Let's just answer questions, because I'm sure that there's lots of questions. I think that I want to end with the difference between a winner and a loser, or another way to put it is with character or without character. You can do what's easiest, or you can do what's right. You can be controlled by your moods, or you can be controlled by your values. You can look for excuses, or you can look for solutions. You quit when challenged, or you persevere when challenged. You rely on external motivation, or you rely on internal motivation. Your words and actions don't match, or your words and actions agree. And finally, you make choices that lead to failure, or you make choices that add up to success. So shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. So I'll answer any questions if somebody has questions.
What do you want to do for the next 5 years or so, now that the hospital doors are open?
Oh, yeah, but we're not through. I truly and honestly, I'm going to give this project till I'm 80, because I feel like when you're 80, you ought to retire and do something that you want to do before you croak. So the wellness center, the auditorium, campus housing, and a swimming pool. Those are the things that I want to see happen in the next 4.5 years, which is a short time frame. The medical office building got their permit yesterday of occupancy, or I think it was Friday. And that was just record time that we got that done. So we have the medical office building now. And we're doing a plan, a master plan, and there's a lot of drainage issues out there, and it's going to take some time to work through that. But I think by the end of the year, we'll be building campus housing, because we need to house the ambulance crew, we need to house the interns and residents that are going to be working, and also if we have more than our quota of people in the hospital, we can move people that have knees and hips out into campus housing in a couple days, and then free up the beds, so it kind of will give us 10 extra beds if we do the campus housing. So there's a lot to do. The worst part is, the hardest part, and this is going to be the challenge of my whole life. I have to raise at least $15 million to do this, and we're not going to raise millions. So I've decided, and I know this is a crazy way to think about it, but you're never going to know unless you ask. So I have a man helping me put a list together of billionaires, because a guy that has $1 billion, if he gives you $15 million, it's like us writing a check for 50. And I'm going to just try to get appointments, and I'm going to try to sell them on our account, on our project, and I think I can do that if I could just get the appointment. But that's the hard part. And I'm going to spend my year trying to raise that $15 million. And I started to have an idea that what I'd like to do is say we don't want a complete handout, because I think we have to put something in the pot to make it seem real. I think I could raise $100,000 in this town. I think that we have enough people that want those things that we could do that. So I'm gonna say, you give us 15 million if I can raise $100,000 in the town. So that gives you, that makes them know that you have a commitment to the project. So that's my plan. And now that I've told you, I'm committed.
You have so many witnesses.
Huh?
You have so many witnesses.
Yes, right. So I'm going to be busy in the spring. But I want to see the project through. I just want to see the campus done, and then I want to retire, and I want to do. I want to take dancing lessons. I did all these things when I was young, but I still want to do them. And I want to take music lessons. I've played the organ for 30 years, but I never really learned my chords, and I want to learn that. I want to play by ear, not by music. And I want to take an art class, and maybe I want to just sit in my pajamas all day and read the book. So that's my plan.
Very good. Very good.
And I think, the hospital is such an amazing, nobody ever really thought that we were going to get what we have, I think. And I remember there was a man who told me, he was a guy I went to school with, and he said, I'm going to sue the hospital. I'm mad they didn't treat my family right, and I'm going to sue the hospital. And I talked him out of it. I said, what are you going to gain by doing that except really bad publicity for yourself? So when he said, well, you're never going to get that hospital built anyway, and he was just sour grapes, and so the other day he came over and he said, I just saw the hospital. And he said, I would have bet my last dollar that never would have happened, and I never dreamed we were going to have something so magnificent in our little town. So it's really pretty nice. And I have a friend in Ukiah who has come up twice to eat in our restaurant. He had to be in town, so he went there to eat. He had lunch and he had dinner, and he said it was great food, and he loved it. So I hope you'll all try the restaurant. Any other questions? Alan?
You mentioned the obvious need for mental health facilities, and I know that was an interest of yours for a while. Is there still some kind of...
I think we have a really, really good shot at this happening now, because the mental health problems in our county have become such a crisis. The sheriff is beside himself because he has 20%, I think, of his inmates or mental health patients. The ER doctors are furious because they get all these people and they leave them there. They don't take them. Or they take them and ship them over to Yuba County where, here's a man in crisis or a woman, and they ship them off away from their family. They have no one, they have no support system. And like Tom says, the last thing they need is to see somebody with a badge and a gun. So Tom gave a great speech the other night in Ukiah, and there were 60 people that showed up. All people that really care about this issue. And so Ace Barish and Dr. Evans and Dr. Trotter are all ER doctors. And they are putting a mental health program together for the old hospital. And it could be a crisis center, it could be drug and alcohol rehab. Those are two things that are desperately needed here. And I think it's coming together in a perfect storm, I really do, because people are ready for something like to happen. They already have a name. They're going to call it the Willits Healing Center, which, sort of isn't like a mental health hospital, a mental institution, so to speak. And these aren't going to be people that are going to go out and, most mental health people are not dangerous. The percentage is very small. Most people have depression, or they're not on their meds, or, there's a few that are dangerous, but those people get shipped off to somewhere where they can take care of them. It's mostly getting people medicated, or sometimes it's abuse in the home. And so I think that if we could make that a really quality mental health facility, that it would also put Willits on the map too, as far as health care. And you can get 5 addresses. This is the interesting part, because for Medicare and Medicaid, you have to have a different address. You can't just all use the same address. And so the way the hospital is configured, there's front and back entrances with bathrooms in about 5 different areas of the hospital. So we see the possibilities there of doing some really great things. And everybody wants a kitchen. That's kind of the problem. So I checked with the program that goes, that they're doing in Santa Rosa. It's called Series, and they take, actually they're using the at-risk kids, and they're teaching them to cook and take home, take food to the needy and to, to senior center and to different places. And the kids have something really to do. So if we could get a vocational training for culinary arts, that would solve another problem. It would give kids something to look forward to doing. So that's just another idea that came up. Everybody's got good ideas, and we just need to collaborate and figure out what's the best thing.
I'll just say that we have a lady at MCO that is dying to start a serious project.
She what?
She's just been really wanting to start a serious
Oh, well,
project.
good. Tell her to come see me. I went down and looked at the project. And Doreen and I have been looking at a lot of the wellness centers, and there's no reason we can't have an absolute first-class facility here. And we've come to the conclusion, we had it all planned that the wellness center would be here and the auditorium would be there and all of this, but it makes more sense to put it all together because it's, the economy of scale to build a building that has multiple uses. And so the architect is figuring out how we can do that and make it like a campus, and so it can be used all the time. And I think we're going to come up with something that's just really spectacular out there. And Willits can be on the map for healthcare. It really can. It's going to be. Let's just say that. Well, it already is.
It is.
And there's, that's the other thing. We had a board meeting this morning, and I wanted to just talk about one other thing too. I've never felt discriminated against in my whole life. I've never had that feeling that I ran into discrimination until today.
Oh,
And I had to resign from the board because I'm 75. Wish I was 65. But, after you're 75, you can't be on a board anymore.
oh really?
And that just seems like discrimination to me because I don't think I went that far over the hill, but maybe I did. So it's really funny how that works. But anyway, I think Jan had to retire too, and she felt the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so, let's see, I got off track and I forgot what I was going to tell you, but
No, you're on track. You are.
We need to do something about that.
Yeah.
That
there's
is discrimination.
really nothing
That's
you
all
can do
wrong.
about. A lot of corporations do that. That happened to my father, except that it really, I'm not going to let it affect me if I do him, but
Yeah.
he was on all those very powerful corporate boards back east. He was in Chicago. He went to a meeting in Chicago once a month. He went to a meeting in Connecticut, and he went to a meeting in Missouri. And people like the chairman of Caterpillar, the chairman of IC Railroad, Central, Illinois Central Railroad. He was meeting these very powerful people who you don't really get a chance to meet when you live in Willits as a rule. And he loved those meetings. It was just, and he loved coming home. That was the other thing. Sometimes he'd fly in and take the Greyhound bus, and we'd pick him up at Grouse Corner, because once he was on that plane, he wanted to be home. He's old head. But after he was off those boards, he just felt like, well, I'm over the hill and it's over. And I think he really did go downhill after that. So I think it's important not to let that happen, but it does happen sometimes.
Well, we're living longer and better now, so maybe we need to
I
revise
think we
that
just start
rule.
getting smart when we're 75.
Yes. Yes.
We've seen a lot. I'll put it that way. We have seen a lot. And the healthy, like Jed's walks, you're still 18 years you've been handling those walks, right?
Well, we've been doing them here for probably 8 or 9 years. The next one in May will be the 20th walk, and we
Oh,
do
the
it twice
20th
a year.
walk. Okay, I thought it was yours. Okay. But, there's just a lot of things that we have going for us. And I see people at the subdivision riding their bikes around. A lot of people are bicycling now instead of walking. And we're going to be a healthy community. And I'm really, really trying to get to like vegetables. Be better than that sugar on it. But the restaurant really has exceptional health food. It's good for you. And I think if people get used to eating out there, we'll improve our habits for certain. Any other questions?
Let's get it
Doreen?
written up.
I just have a comment that I'd like to make, because I think, Margie, sometimes we get very involved with our health about the length of our life, but I also think it's very important to look at the depth of our life. And I think you really epitomize that in our area here. You've lived a very deep life with all your experiences and the ups and downs and the challenges, and you just bounce back. So I think that resilience is really important for people to develop. It's like a yoga of the soul, as opposed to just the body, to be flexible, to no matter
Yeah, you
what
have to
happens.
be, and you know, you really have to roll with the punches. You just have to do that because you get punched a lot. And, you know, you never know where it's gonna come from either. You know, you're working on the project and, yeah, $20 million over budget, were we expecting that? We didn't even have a clue that was gonna happen. So it just suddenly changed everything we were thinking, and we had to go a different direction, but we had to figure it out. And you can always figure it out. There's always an answer to things. If you don't get excited, I get pretty excited, but you know, you have to think it through and get people, surround yourself with people that are good thinkers, and they can, you know, they have ideas and they have positive attitudes. I think that's just half the battle. You can, you know, you can be a sour grape any day of the week, but you know, if you think the best is going to happen, it's probably going to happen eventually. And I know I said I had a non-traditional background because I've been in the box factory, the toilet business, construction, you know, lots of really weird things that women don't normally do. But, you know, they were all fun. They were all challenging, and I wouldn't trade my life for anything. You know, if I dropped dead tomorrow, I've had a great life, and not everybody can say that. So.
I want to make a comment, Margie, to what you said, is that when I look around the room and, you know, the people that are here and who are attracted to come here to hear you. I mean, that's why everybody who's in this room came here tonight, was because we believe in what you're doing, we feel aligned with what you're doing, and, you know, to me, when Margie says, I'm going to make this happen in the next 4.5 years, that's inspiring because, you know, a lot of people will say they're going to do things. Not everybody does it. Nobody can do it, has all the things she said about how she's been doing it. So one of the things that occurs to me as you're talking about not only the wellness center, the hospital, the food movement, there's a lot of people, I mean, God, look, we just ate. I mean, this is incredible food. Is that I think what the vision I have that ties in with that is that we have an opportunity to create a model here in Willits for what's going to be necessary all over the world for taking care of our people in all the ways that the world that we're moving into is demanding of us. You know, we can't be getting our food sent thousands of miles or hundreds of miles away. We have to do that here. I work for among my jobs is for the local mental health, and I'm part of seeing every day how many people get sent out of the community. Right. And not only is it, you know, destructive to people's lives, but you just can't afford to keep, you know, sending people, you know, away with the expense that it costs.
It's like $1,200 a day.
Yeah, it's hugely expensive. And within, you know, our community, we can figure out how to have the things locally that we need to deal with our alcohol problems, our mental health problems, our food problems, all these different issues, not only for us as a community, but as we figure it out, we can be a model for, because every other community everywhere, certainly in the country, has to do this. Right. So as you're going around talking to billionaires and we're all, you know, some part of this vision, I think part of what we can offer is that this isn't just for us. You're not just going to give us something that's going to help us, but we're going to develop a model and we're going to have video where you can see how it works, where we can give people the tools to be able to do these things in all the places that this is going to have to be done, because we can never keep doing all of these things like we've been doing them. That's what, you know, your vision is telling us.
You know, how long ago was it, Jan, that UC Davis came? It's probably been, what, 6 or 7 years?
They were one of the first.
Yeah, they were one of the first. We had all the leadership for UC Davis came over on a school bus, a Greyhound bus. And I took them out to the ranch for dinner, and they'd never been on a dirt road that was as curvy as that one. It scared them half to death. But anyway, we had a great dinner. And they actually gave us $50,000 after they heard our vision, because we had the dean, the CFO, we had everybody that was in a position to be able to make a decision on that bus. And they made us the model for rural to university medicine. And because of that, we have this great telemedicine room. And UC Davis just sent a really phenomenal piece of equipment that's brand new. And actually, right after we got it, it saved a little boy's life, because this little boy went into a coma, and they brought him into the hospital, and he was the son of a nurse. And they got UC Davis on the phone, and the doctor said, you have to do this procedure right now. And it was Spanish, and he said, well, the surgeon will be here in 10 minutes. And he said, you don't have 10 minutes, you have to do it right now. And so Ace remembered he'd done this in school like 30 years ago. And he let this man walk him through the procedure, and they saved that little boy's life. So we're doing amazing things with telemedicine. We're able to have more ICU patients than we've ever been able to have, because it's very hard to find ICU physicians and nurses. But we can go into Dr. Goon, he's in Sebastopol. He has a whole group of doctors who are always on call. We have a robot. The robot, goes and looks at the patient, and then he communicates and tells these physicians what to do. Mm-hmm. So, communication is going to change healthcare in a dramatic way. It already is. But it's pretty exciting. And I remember Channel 2 did a story about that, and they were laughing because this little robot went to the elevator, and he told the reporter, he said, could you push the button because I don't have any arms? And they showed that on the TV. So, I think we just have some really phenomenal things to look forward to, and I really thank all of you for coming out on a cold night. So,
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy it.
And it is.